Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Um, Dr. Maisha here. You all know who I am. Those of you, especially who have been around following me, listening to the podcast. Um, so today I've been reflecting because I think I've been sharing with you all. I have an upcoming training on actually starting next week, NLP training, neurolinguistic programming. And I've been reflecting because there are a lot of people who have been asking me recently, what is it that I do? What is it that this neuro linguistic programming is? And how does it actually help me? How does it help? And not me, but like me, the person who's asking, like, how does it help me? How does it help me help my clients? How does it help me as a leader? How does it help me as a parent? And so I wanted to every now and then, I like to come back in and give you like a little brief of like, what is this thing that I talk about so often, this neuro linguistic programming. So I'm gonna, do a short little episode on that today, just to kind of talk about like what is it that how do we use our language? How is it that we can use our language? What is this thing, and how can we use our language to transform um, both ourselves and the people around us? So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about what this work is. And for those of you who know, I have been doing this work of neurolinguistic programming, of language and processing and teaching people about the brains for the last 10 years. And I've been teaching the work for the last 3 years. So I've been doing this work with patients before I left clinical medicine. And so I use a lot of this work inside of my integrative medicine practice when I was doing that, and went on to transition into the coaching world, and really used a lot of this work in the coaching world to help empower the clients that I would see and that I still see. I still do some one-on-one work by helping to release the old limiting beliefs and decisions to help reframe what I like to call remap. That's how I came up with the name, remap their mind, so that those inherited beliefs, those inherited conversations that stop us, that inherited self-doubt that stops us, that it can be released. And so how I want to frame this conversation today is just by talking about a language and and how it really does make a difference with um, our thinking, and why language is so important. Now, when I talk about language and I talk about communication, and I know that I've said this plenty times before, so if you have listened to any of my podcasts in the past, it comes up as a common theme that communications, that words, right? When we talk about language, words only represent 7% of all communication. And there are various ways that we communicate like in language. So there's the word language, there's the words that we encode, and then the language of our bodies, right? So there's the language of our bodies, there's the language inside of the tone of our voice. There's that structural, and then there's this sort of language that is really an energy between people, and it's hard to quantify because you can't really touch it. You can't always really see it, but you can feel it, right? It's the kinesthetic language that happens between people. It's the thing that happens when you lock eyes with a person from across the room. That's the cliche um, way that people describe it, right? You connect with someone, and that connection, even if there's very little facial expression, those micro expressions create an internal feeling, and that connection in itself is a language. So I'll start by just at that basic level. Language is very important because we think in pictures. So how what our brain first does is it creates these pictures, and then we encode that and we give those words. Like the language is made up, And you probably can see that or know that because people are making up words all the time. I actually, you know, recently started using a word that I don't think is in the dictionary. I don't know. I've surprised myself with using words that I thought probably weren't in the dictionary, but are. But there's a word that I use called whelmed, and I was talking with a colleague friend about it earlier today. It's that space that's not quite overwhelmed and not quite underwhelmed. So I say that to say that language is made up. The words that we use, the encoding of words that we use, all of that is made up and has developed and expanded over time. But we actually think in pictures. Now, what happens is, now we talk about these filters, right? I always talk about the filters. If you've seen my TEDx talk, that's one of the main points of the talk is these filters, right? So and a lot of times when I'm teaching in organizations, I talk about the fact that everybody has these different mental models, and what that means is they have different pictures that are representing the word that they're thinking of. So, for example, if I say love, then your mental picture of love may be different from my mental picture of love, so that we think in pictures, and then we put a word to that we have learned from childhood, because we typically learn this verbal language in childhood. Before we can speak, we speak in other ways. We have nonverbal communication and nonverbal language. But when we do learn the words that are encoded, then the pictures get encoded into those words. And that's sort of like how babies learn to talk. You show them a picture of a chair and then you say chair. So now imagine we think in pictures and we form these sort of movies in our mind. So the movie is sort of the collection of picture and motion, right? The motion picture in our mind. And our problems look like motion pictures. And we put words to those, right? So how we use word language, and this is sort of getting to the essence of the work that I do. It's um, reasonable to think that you can use language to actually shift what a picture looks like, or what what the picture in our mind looks like, so that it actually gives you a different perspective, expands the view. So if we're in a problem and our view is like this, it's like tunnel vision, right? But if we can use language, it helps us to expand the problem. So, see, my peripheral vision has widened to see solutions that we could not have seen before. And that is what neurolinguistic programming is all about. It is a set of language tools and practices and patterns that there's nothing new under the sun. These are things that have been studied for years in family therapy model, in linguistics, in the way language impacts our brain. So linguistics and neuroscience, in in various aspects of psychology, behavioral, how language impacts our behavior, or how our listening, what we hear, impacts our experience, impacts our behavior. So it's a collection of things that have been researched, a lot of which, and even how we are anchored, how there are certain things in the world that create that stimulus response, right? So there are the many things that have been studied, that some have been applied in certain areas, but many have not. They've only existed in theory. And what neurolinguistic programming has done is taken a lot of these things that have been studied in science and applied them to real life, like come up with the how to technique in order to apply them to real life, to be able to leverage the impact, the positive impact that they have on a person's life. So now I'm coming back to this, we using our language to transform ourselves and others. So if you have, let's say, a problem, I'm going to give you just a real, funny example of my son. Um, we were coming home from kung fu, as you probably know if you've been listening to me for a while. We were coming home from kung fu some months ago, and during that particular day of class, we did what's called our daily fitness requirement, where it's push-ups and sit-ups and squats, and just the general calisthenics sort of workout that we do towards the end of our session, whatever of the curriculum that we're doing. And so Delson, being a kiddo who was a thin kiddo, after he did the sit-ups, his abs were hurting. So he's driving home and he's like, "Oh, my abs are hurting. My no, he says my stomach. My stomach is hurting. My stomach is hurting." And I'm questioning him a little bit about it. And he says, "Yeah, it's like when I move, and I think it's from those sit-ups, and I never want to do sit-ups again." And I told him, so now this is the problem, right? Problem state. The abs are hurting, you know, doesn't like sit-ups because they make his abs hurt. So what I say to him, so that's the picture in his brain, is like, you know, sit-ups equals pain. So then I say to him, "Well, you want to be strong, right?" So there's the starting to shift the mental picture. And he says, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, the sit-ups will actually make your abs super strong. And that six pack that your brother has that you always talk about, that will eventually give you that." So now look, I shifted the picture in his mind from pain to, what his abs could look like. Now um, that's a very simple example. However, it's what I'm demonstrating is how one simple reframe, or language tool, reframe, can change the mental image of a problem in someone's mind to give them a larger view of what's possible. And when you do that, when you apply that in work, when you apply, that was just me applying it as a mom, which I do all the time with my 8-year-old. Um, but when you do that in work, when a person is coming to you, and I just got through teaching, we talked about when I did my last cohort with session with Yale. We talked a lot about context reframing and meaning reframe. And one of the things we teach in the NLP trainings is how to shift the context, to shift what the internal picture, or shift the meaning, what something might mean, in order to shift the internal picture, right, in the mind. So what it does is it opens the mind to, oh, this is not as much of a problem as I thought. Or, oh, you're right, in a different situation it may not mean that. And now how can I look at this differently to be more empowered, right? That is the essence of how we can use language to not only transform our own thinking and how we're looking at it, but also to transform, to like really help others to not be so attached to their problems. Because let me tell you, people are very attached to their problems. We wear our problems like it's a badge of honor sometimes, right? And we get so stuck in the problem that we can't see any solution. And it's not usually useful to try to tell a person the solution if they're stuck in the problem. What's useful is to help them to really see the problem differently so that they can find the solution themselves. That's called empowerment, right? And so this is the work that I teach. This is the work that I do. And this is a lot of what neurolinguistic programming does. Now, how does this help in different? I talked specifically about communication, but what about belief system? If you there are specific tools and techniques that we teach in the trainings that talk about that, I mean, that help one to release an inherited belief or an unresourceful belief by, once again, changing the internal picture in their mind, like replacing a negative picture in the mind with something that's a bit more positive. Now, there's also that's in our rapid transformation, but there's also deep work, deep release work, to really go and say, okay, well, when is the first time that you felt this thing, or that you said this thing to yourself? And to, again, give a person a different perspective. to see, because at 45, something that really hurt at 5 or 10 would be interpreted differently 40 years later. And so when your now self can then go back and look from different points of view, again, this is all about expanding the view. Then what it does is it allows us to see things differently. Now, that doesn't mean that it absolves the hurt or absolves the pain, but it does actually help you to release whatever you were holding on to. So that's actually a part of the work as well. And so a lot of the work that we do is all in service of helping to be more powerful in emotional regulation, helping to use language to transform the mental pictures that are in our mind, either thought based or belief based or even values based, so that if we feel stuck in a place, or if we feel stuck in a conversation, we can help move past that resistance with a person, or past our own internal resistance, to create an outcome that we really want and desire and deserve, for that matter. So that is a lot of what I do. And I want to say that, it is one of the, I think, simpler things. I say simple, but not always easy, because in order to be able to, we're practiced at how we already do things. And in order to be able to retrain our brains, it does take practice. And that's why I teach the tools that I do, in order to be able to teach you how to interrupt the old, and how to insert the new practices, the new learnings, and how to do it in a way that is very trauma sensitive and trauma responsive. So that is a bit about what I do, a bit about neurolinguistic programming, and I think that for those people, and really in any area, but for those people who are really interested in deepening their mastery of language, who are really interested, who are coaches, or aspiring coaches, who really want to lean into doing deeper work with others, um, to help them to do some emotional mental release of old belief patterns, of old stuck negative emotions like anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, shame, who really want to do that deeper work of helping their clients to release all the internal obstacles that stand in the way of them and their goals. And for those leaders out there who want to be able to expand the listening, expand their capacity to connect and communicate with fellow leaders, with their staff, their managers, their direct reports. This is why you would learn these tools. And I teach them in full certification, which I'm stepping into Monday. And I also teach elements of them in organizations to leadership, um, as needed, as customized. So just wanted to leave you with that. And I would love to hear from you. What is it that you can see, based on what you've heard, that this could be of of that this could how this could expand you, how this could benefit your life in some way. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right. Well, that is all I had for today. This was a short one. I just was doing some reflections as we're about to go into our training. I talked to all of the students that are going to be coming in on Monday, and everybody is extremely excited. And so I will, you know how I like to do. I will definitely give a little report from the field and afterwards, and share with you how it all went. But I just wanted to. Oh, you're very, very welcome. I just want to come because a lot of people do wonder, like, she keeps talking about this NLP, this neuro linguistic programming thing. What is that? I wanted to, and I will do this every now and then. I wanted to just give you a little primer of what it is that's behind a lot of the episodes that I do. What are the tools, and why am I teaching all these various things? These are the tools of neurolinguistic programming, and I just gave you sort of a skim the surface overview. But if you're interested and you think you might want to learn more, then you just go to the website you see on the screen, or if you're listening to me live or on any of the platforms, you can message me directly. If you're listening on replay, the information will be in the show notes. And so, if you're interested in having me again come out to your organization, you can go to the website. There is a corporate page where you can download the options for training. So yeah, just reach out to me if that's of interest to you. And until then, share this episode with someone who may be interested in expanding themselves in that way. I like to invite you to share, because I think that we all are in need of constant personal and professional development, expansion, especially with everything that's going on in the world. The more we can get this work out there, I think the better for us, our future. So you all have an amazing rest of the day and rest of the week. And I will be off live next week because I'll be in my training, but I will be back the following week. So have a great couple of weeks, and namaste.